Since 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, Harpers Ferry residents warily watched the angry, rising Shenandoah River, tossing debris on its brown waves. A just received telegraph report warned of an approaching deluge of water 50 miles upriver. But the summer had been hot, and the stream bed still bone dry. No one believed the report. By 8 p.m. that evening, 5 families living on Overton Island opposite Union Street were cut off from town and trapped. Wrote resident Joseph Barry of the incident, "The screams of men and women and children in imminent peril of drowning or being crushed by falling houses. The sympathetic cries and sobs of the pitying spectators were partially lost in the furious thunders of the furious tide and the spectral light of a young moon wading through heavy masses of cloud, which gave a weird coloring to the fearful picture." People watching from high ground in town took heart when they saw a lantern light go on inside the widow Overton's house on Overton Island. But it suddenly went black. It seems, in retrospect, widow Overton lit a lantern inside her house and carried it out to her porch to see in the darkness just how high the water had risen when a torrent ripped away the porch with her on it. Her premonition fulfilled. Families huddled in their homes and factories on Virginia's Island after the rickety bridge to the mainland had collapsed. Then with a crash, the horrible collapse of a large brick building on the island swept away the lives of Benjamin Bateman, his wife and children, James Bateman, his wife and children, 22 people in all. Buildings continued to crumble, and rescue operations were continuously attempted. Brave boatmen hauled in people clutching for dear life onto tree limbs while dangling helplessly above the dangerous waters. One of the greatest heroes was German-born James T. Reed, co-proprietor of Reed and Hopwood. He lost all of his office papers and his ferry boats when he chose instead to rescue the aging Mrs. Nunamaker from the doorway of her collapsing home by placing her before him on his horse and later hoisting her to safety and to friends at a reachable point in a high stone wall. Old John Wernwag never left his home and machine shop on Virginia's Island and seemed not about to now. No way. He was the town's strange, reclusive, but brilliant tinkerer, a mechanical genius, in fact, living amidst his strange homemade tools. When all of a sudden, around 10 o'clock Saturday morning, people on shore screamed and gasped and began praying fervently when the river took away Mr. Wernwag's house. Its roof headed downstream. Then the roof crashed into 2 large leaning oak trees, breaking into 2. Old John Wernwag, who was on board, alertly grabbed onto one of the pieces and climbed up on top for the rest of the ride, wiping his brow, preparing for the next surprise. Then he disappeared in the worst part of the river called Bull Ring. All hope was lost. Until a report from Berlin 2 hours later said they picked up a soaked and exhausted old man named John Wernwag, who was on his way home on the Brunswick train. And when he stepped off the train in Harpers Ferry to cheering, thankful friends, the recluse, overcome by excess attention and more, fainted right there in a heap. It also happened to be his 76th birthday. When it was all over, they counted over 70 structures destroyed between Friday and Sunday, and although the official death toll reported 33 dead, the disappearance of a good number of uncounted squatters who lived on Virginia's Island was never figured in. Not the highest flood, but surely the most destructive in the history of Harpers Ferry. The flood of 1870 was the flood to remember, but the flood never to be repeated.